Wasn't you? So, okay. It's on?
Yeah, just turn it
Okay.
that way.
All right, cool. All right, so we're going to have a good time tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to have a really good time tonight. We may be few, but actually I kind of like it this way because I haven't done this presentation in a while, and so I'm kind of rusty, and I want to use this opportunity to brush up on it. So you see the name of the presentation, and what I've kind of developed a passion for over the last few years is finance. And in doing that, I went to the Word, and I found that there was a lot of information in the Bible that related to finance. And there were a couple of things that kind of kicked me in this direction. So today we're going to enter to learn, and that's my contact information. But the great thing is you guys, you all have it. All right. So let me start with the why. And the why was a lot of the African-centered groups that I was involved with looked at Jews and it looked at money. And also I started looking at the situation of people of African descent amongst the world and kind of wondered why is an entire group facing very similar problems. And then I decided that I wanted to study some classical groups, classical civilizations, and I noticed that there was something particular in all these great civilizations that we've studied. And one of the things that I found in all of these great civilizations that we studied is there was a strong financial base that kept those civilizations going. You know, we can study like Mansa Musa or even Greek or Kemet or Egypt and Nubia, Monomotopolis. All the great civilizations we studied had a big, strong financial base. But I guess the biggest kick in the butt was my father on his deathbed. And it wasn't actually the same day. But as he started sharing with me that he was going to become an ancestor soon, he said, well, I taught you how to be an honest person. I forced you to be an honest person. He said, I taught you to be a good person. He said, I tried to raise you in a Christian household. And he said, it's up to you to keep that going because, that's not mine. I kind of forced you to live that way. He said, but one of the things that I wasn't able to do a good job of, honestly, is teaching you about finance. And he said, when I look over my family's history, we haven't done a really great job with finance. I look back at all the opportunities and monies that went through our hands, and we just didn't do a good job. So he made me promise that before he passed and immediately after he passed, I would learn as much as I can about finance so that our family would have a different legacy. Different legacy. You know how the Bible says that a good man leaves inheritance to his children's children. And my father was able to leave a small inheritance to his grandchildren, but he didn't think that the legacy financially that he left was really anything to be proud of. And he felt that actually, he said, I'm going to have to answer to a lot of my bad financial decisions when I meet Christ. And so he kind of forced me to do that. So after that, a few months after that, I got involved with this group called World Financial Group. And I was involved with them for a number of years. I'm not currently active with them. But as I said in the presentation, I look back at most of the clients that I worked with, and 90% of them were living paycheck to paycheck. And 95% of them considered themselves Christian. But according to what the Bible taught, they did some biblically foolish things. So, and I used to do them, and I'm still struggling to get out of a lot of my old habits as well. But one of the biggest things was that Proverbs is actually called the businessman's Bible in some of the business arenas. It said, you read the quote right there, in the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. And it talks about how if you live in paycheck to paycheck and you're devouring all you have, you're being foolish. And that really kind of sat on me, so I really kind of forced my family to live in a situation where we're not living paycheck to paycheck. We truly live beneath our means, and we're not at the point that I want us to be yet. We're still struggling with that, but we're definitely beneath our means, where before we were above our means. And that's what, this proverb speaks to. And I'm also, as you see in the little red, I'm trying my best not to return to my foolishness, because life is real. So the plan that I've figured out, and I've learned, prayer, meditation, reading in the Bible to a degree, and also reading a lot outside of the canonized Bible, is that there's a pretty simple plan, and it's take my blessing, manage my blessing, increase my blessing, be a blessing to others, and then I'll increase your blessing. It's circular. It's just a circle that goes over and over. So you're supposed to continue to earn income. You're supposed to manage it in a way where you don't have a level of debt, and you're accountable. There's a guy that I follow, Dave Ramsey, and he says that every penny should have a plan. Every penny should have a plan. Increase the blessing, and I put in parentheses, no doubt, because we can read through the Bible and it talks about how great people took a small seed and made really big things out of it. That's throughout the Bible, and actually it's throughout any of the quote-unquote holy texts that people revere. It always talks about somebody from a low situation taking something small and making it big and making a very big change. In some ways, you could say that's the whole point of the Bible. Take something small and make something really blessed out of it and make a big change. So, that's the plan that I'm going to talk about today in very simple terms. Okay, so it's really do a lot with a little. And to flee from debt and being dumb, to live beneath your income, and while you're doing that, to tithe and invest, to forward fund, to take care of responsibilities, and to make sure you have discretionary money. Now, you may notice that I left out a number 3 for a reason. I'm going to ask you a little later on, what do you think that number 3 might be when you're dealing with living beneath your income? Increase your value and your income, create and maintain prosperity, and to serve generously. To serve generously. So, this presentation is based on the canonized Protestant Bible. So, those of us who read the Bible, particularly in this church, we read the canonized Protestant Bible. So, other Bibles, the Catholic canon has 73 books. The Orthodox, the original Christian books, had actually over 100 books, but if you go to a bookstore now and get the Orthodox Christian Bible, it has 81. While the one that we normally deal with is 66 books. So I'm going to deal with the one that has 66 books because I realize how church folk can be. And if it's not the Bible that they have, they think something's different with it. So this is the one that majority of us have, the one that has 66 books, right? All right. So, but some of the information that I found was outside of those 66 books, primarily in some of the Jewish literature. And so the Hebrew Bible has 3 different sections primarily. One that deals with teaching, one that deals with prophecy, and one that deals with writings. And those writings are really kind of interesting itself. So let's go to the Torah, which is part of that tenet that I was talking about. And even though we hear people, particularly Jews and Hebrews, talk about the Torah, it's not just one book. It's a whole collection of different books. And in those different books, it has a lot of different directions and laws and what we call beatitudes and things of that nature. For instance, with the Hebrews, with the Jews, things that we call the 10 Commandments are just part of a whole set of commandments. They're actually 50 or 60 if you look at their Jewish book. And what we consider the 10 Commandments was just the top portion, the composite of all the other pieces. So, why do Jewish people seem to be a lot richer? Because they look at it.
Let's talk about.
And so I'm going to let you see a little video that kind of displays
the Jewish
that.
people in general have been very successful.
Pastor,
Let me say it, because, if you say it, they'll say you're an anti-Semitic bigot, so why don't I say it? Because they won't say that about me.
Okay.
The Jewish people, how did you put it? The Jewish people are extraordinarily successful.
Correct.
Put it this way, exactly. The Jewish people are disproportionately successful with money. It doesn't mean there are no poor Jewish people, there are. But disproportionately, they are. I mean, look at the Forbes 400 list. Now, in the United States of America, the Forbes 400 measures the 400 richest Americans. Jews are about 2% of America's population. That means there should be about 8 or 9 Jews on the list, usually about 100. I'd call that disproportional representation.
Okay. Yes, sir.
We have to ask ourselves why that is. And after extensive research, and I spent really years on this in a very serious kind of a way, what accounts for it? You've got to ask the question.
Well, exactly.
It's so obvious. And I also knew that if anybody uncircumcised asked the question, they'd be called a bigot.
Yeah.
So I thought it's really funny, because it's kind of the only time in all of academia where the removal of a piece of skin converts bigotry to research. So I did research.
So what did you find, sir?
Well, first of all, I found four explanations that I needed to explore honestly, and which I later was able to debunk. For instance, in the old Oxford English Dictionary, the word Jew also appears as a verb, not only as a noun, as in, I Jewed you, meaning I ripped you off.
Yeah.
So one possibility is...
I never heard that, by the way.
Yeah, to Jew somebody is an expression, more so in England than America. But I had to look into this possibility very seriously. I didn't know at the outset. I wanted to be absolutely honest, even if it reflected badly on my people. But I did want to know what the truth is. Is it possible that Jews prosper disproportionately because they just rip everyone off all the time? And you laugh because you know the world, and you're right, of course, because you cannot prosper for a long time by ripping people off.
Exactly.
You can prosper for a short while until people figure you out. And I just discovered in my research too many Christian friends of mine throughout the United States who had been in business with Jews for decades and decades. And so it was clear to me that that was not the explanation. Are there Jewish rip-off artists? Sure, there are in every group, but no more and no less than anybody else. That was not the answer for Jewish economic success. Another possibility, this is a real dumb explanation, but you'd be surprised how many people believe it, and that is that the Cossacks in Europe killed off all the poor Jews. All the rich people were able to bribe their way to freedom.
Really?
So this suggests that Jewish men have a kind of money gene in their sperm that they pass down to their children or something like that. It's a really dumb racial explanation, but and it's complete nonsense, of course, because we find very often that after several generations, great fortunes dissipate. And if there was a gene, it would still be there. The problem is that it's not a gene, it's something spiritual, and that does get lost if you don't protect it and preserve it. A third explanation is that, and a lot of people believe this one too, by the way. Shall I tell you?
Yeah,
the third explanation is really funny also, and that is that Jews are super high intelligent. Now, the truth is that while it's not possible to do well with money if you are super, super, super dumb, like below functional level. Do you remember Forrest Gump? He became a tycoon. Well, that was a movie. That's not real life. Like really, really, really handicapped people in that way do not become tycoons.
Right.
But at the other end of the bell curve, it's equally true. Super dumb people can't make money. Super rich people can't. Super intelligent people can't either. Have you ever heard the expression, too smart for his own good?
Yeah.
Where are the smartest people in America? They're on the faculties of American universities. There's nobody worse with money than that category of person. Being super smart is a handicap, just as being super dumb is. All the rest of us are in that middle zone of perfect adequacy.
Now listen, we have just a few more minutes left, and I want to continue tomorrow, but give me the answer before we say goodbye today. Why?
The answer is a deep and vast collection of tips and tools and techniques that each and everybody can learn. These are embedded within the Torah, they're embedded within Jewish culture, they're embedded within Jewish scholarship, and they've always been a part of Jewish culture and Jewish civilization.
We'll talk about that tomorrow.
And let's talk specifically about some of these tips and tools, because I've managed to reduce them in my book, Thou Shalt Prosper, which I mentioned. I've actually reduced them to 10 basic commandments that each and every one of us
and
can
found
do.
in the Torah.
Yes, correct.
So prosperity is embedded in the Torah.
Prosperity is the response. It's God's response to us doing what he wants us to do.
And I think that last piece that he says, that prosperity is in our response to following God's plan, which was really pivotal to me. So, wealth and debt are results of behaviors. Okay? Excellent behaviors cause excellent results. You reap what you sow. Okay. Wealthy people don't pay interest, they earn interest. I'll let that marinate. All right. Personal and corporate finance is based upon 80% behavior, 20% knowledge. And be peculiar in the financial world, be in the financial world, but not of the financial world. These are some considerations that I kind of picked up after studying what his book. I have his book. I picked up a book by Michelle Singletary. I have a segment from her that you should check out. I really started following Clark Howard, Dave Ramsey, a lot of other people who talk about really great things, and many of them biblically based, that can help us have a better, stronger financial situation. But since I realized that I was probably going to end up speaking more with Christians to make sure that they accepted what I have to say, what I found, I thought, well, let me see what Yeshua said, what Christ says about finance and about these principles that are in the Torah. And this is what I found. That in a lot of the messages from Yeshua, from Christ, he talked about sowing the seed and growing a tree. Take something small and make it big. And one of the stories that he gave talked about that happening. All right? And I'm not going to read it because I think we can all read that pretty quickly. But if you really look at the parables that Christ taught with, he talks a lot about taking something small, using it the right way, and making something big, which is one of the things that I talked about earlier. Take my blessing, manage my blessing, increase my blessing. Okay. Christ in Matthew 25 verses 1 to 13, he gives a parable of the 10 women, and it really talks about having emergency funds. In a financially, if you look at it through the paradigm of financial responsibility, it means to have an emergency fund. And I found that to be one of the quickest but most basic and prudent financial things you can do. And so I tell people all the time now that if you look at your finances as a person, you've probably met somebody who's been bullied before. And a person who's being bullied is somebody who can't stand up for themselves and doesn't have anybody else to stand up for them. But life can be a big bully to you unless you can stand up for yourself and you have something that can stand up for you. Your insurance policy stands up for you when life tries to bully you, right? Okay? And another way that you can protect yourself, and I try to take it slow, is by making sure that you have an emergency fund. And so I'm going to give a real life example. In my truck outside, I thought I had a burned out light bulb, and it turns out that the machine behind the light bulb is really faulty. And the light bulb itself is like $50 getting it repaired. It's like, okay, that's no big deal. But they told me to get this piece repaired, it's $700. All right, so in some cases that would be an emergency. Because if I'm driving at night, I'm going to get pulled over by 5-0. Don't want to deal with that type of situation. I have in my emergency fund about $3,000. So now it's just a situation. And the only reason I haven't gotten it fixed now is because I'm being kind of lazy about it. But it's not an emergency. It's just a situation, and I know I'm going to handle that situation, and then I'm going to have to settle down and stop spending money on a couple of things and build up that $700 so I'm ready for the next situation that life throws at me. So life is not bullying me. It's just a situation. I can handle a situation. So this Matthew 25, verse 1 through 13, talks about these 10 women, and it talks about them being foolish and some of them being wise, and it talks about having emergency funds. So if you have an emergency fund, you can prevent life from bullying you. So Michelle Singletary and Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, some of the other financial people talk about, hey, hurrying up and getting $1,000 in an emergency fund and making sure you don't spend it on things that are not emergency. Like Christmas is not an emergency, happens the same time every year. Birthdays are not emergencies. You know, those type of things aren't really emergencies. And the more that I've studied this stuff, and I kind of looked at it with some of the clients when I was involved with World Financial, I realized that there were certain things, like if I bought a car, I knew I was going to have to replace the tires. That's not an emergency. You know, I knew that something was going to go wrong, so that's not really an emergency. So I would even say have your emergency account and have a going to happen account, because things are going to happen when you have a house. It's going to happen when you have appliances. It's going to happen when you have a car, because those things are not built to last. Those things are going to happen, so they're not truly emergencies. But when you're first starting out, you might want to look at them as emergencies. And your emergency fund, you want to start off with $1,000 and build that baby to be very robust, because life is real and it's going to happen to you. So Christ also in Matthew 25, 14, 22 through 28 talked about doing something with gifts. And I'm going to jump right to 26. And his Lord answered and said unto him, thou wicked and slothful servant. In other words, if you don't invest with the blessings, money, finances I give you, you're wicked and you're slothful. You're lazy and you're evil. And that's what his Lord said. So if we're following the Bible, which is about our Lord, that's what our Lord is saying to us. If we're not investing. Deep, huh? You can do the, pull out your Bible, check if you want. Am I on point so far? Okay. Other thing that in Matthew 22:10 and later on in Luke, there's a story about a meal. A king preparing this great meal and invited all these people. And the people who showed up on time got a chance to eat. And the people who didn't show up on time missed the meal. So if you miss the opportunities that God's giving you with your financial blessing, your income, if you miss those opportunities, you're going to miss the meal. Let that marinate. If you skip the plan, if you don't follow the plan that God talks about throughout the Bible, and you don't manage his blessing, you're not going to get the increase. You're not going to get the meal. You're not going to eat well. And that one really kind of sat in on me.
I'm Michelle Singletary, and I'm here to help you with your money. You'll be seeing a lot of me around here, so don't even try hiding. I've been talking to Lisa about trying to figure out if she can afford this vacation with her son. And you can't.
Is this the pain and suffering part?
Yes. Right. So let's go through your monthly expenses to sort of talk about why you can't take this vacation. So tell me about your monthly expenses. Start with the biggest one.
Biggest one is my mortgage. That's $1,239. That includes my homeowner's insurance and taxes.
Okay, what about utilities?
Utilities runs me around $330.
Car insurance?
Car insurance is $132. Gas, $80.
Groceries?
Gross, $400.
Cell phone?
Well, the cell phone is $132. I have cable, but that includes the internet and the home phone.
Okay, so you have this phone at home, and then you have your cell phone with you and your son.
Yes, my son.
And so why are you paying his bill?
I am.
Why?
That's for another show, Michelle.
I mean, he's not working, right?
Well, he is. He's not working much.
Okay, so you don't need to call anybody.
And you tell him that?
I will. Come over to my house. He don't have no cell phone. They have the cans with the string. That's all they need. So what about the credit card?
Credit card is around $550 per month. That's $14 4 credit cards, just the minimum.
Right. So when you total all this up, it's just under $3,000. If you multiply that times 3, it comes to 3,000 times 3, $9,000. That's what you need for an emergency fund.
Okay.
Don't you love her? But you know what? Think about you and all of you out there. You probably think emergency fund is just, your house payment or a car payment, but it's everything that costs to run your house. And because you have to have all that, you can't afford that vacation. What do you think about that?
I'm not happy about that. I mean, I don't know where is it supposed to come from. I really don't know. Right. But it's okay. It's all right. Do you think you can start putting some money away for the emergency fund?
Yeah. Listen, here's the thing. Your son needs your presence, not the presents. And it doesn't matter if you take him on vacation. You don't have to do anything. Just being there with them. Just being in his presence, loving him. You know what? Here's the thing. I challenge all of you here in the audience at home to list your monthly expenses and multiply it times 3. That's the beginning of your emergency fund. So you think you're sitting here going, oh, that's a lot of debt for her. That's a lot of debt for you too. Do this now. Do it because it's important. It will help you sleep at night. So look, I know that I told you can take a vacation, but let's look at some places where you can cut to try to begin that emergency fund. You may not get the $3,000 in 1 month, maybe take you 3 or 4 months, but you do that. So look, you have cable, internet, and phone. You have a cell phone, so maybe cut the phone part of that. We can look at your car insurance and see if you can trim that. $1 here, $20 here. You've got a cell phone for your son. Let him pay his own cell phone bill. And you get a basic phone where you just like, baby, you home, you okay? And that's it. I mean, really, like $30 or $40 a month. And that's $100 right there. It may take a while, but you can get there. But at least you'll have something if something happens. That's good. Sounds good, and it's good. And I'm going to help you with this. You can find tips on our website at abc.com/.
All right, so that's Michelle Singletary. These are some of the books that I've started dealing with. Michelle's book is the 21 Days to Financial Freedom, The Power to Prosper. She has a 21-day fast, and hers is kind of biblically based, but it's a financial fast. So you follow that for 21 days, and it gives you the strength to start dealing with some of your situations. Dave Ramsey, I'm going to show you a little bit about him a little later on. The Thou Shalt Prosper is the 10 Commandments for Making Money. That's Rabi Lapin. I listen to a lot of Rabi Lapin. He has a good podcast. And so I told you about the plan earlier, and then there's 5 principles of it. Have a written plan for each of your pennies. Act your wage. You may notice I highlighted age. You tell people to act their age all the time, but you may need to act your wage, and then you won't spend more than you have. You won't go into debt. You act your wage. When people talk about tithing, it's kind of interesting to me that they'll tithe because they want to have favor with God, but then they won't put away 10% for themselves, so they'll have favor against the life's winds. You know what I'm saying? And if we're supposed to follow God's plan and do what God says to do, when he says, hey, have some stuff stored up so I can take care of people, you should also have some stuff stored up so you can take care of people. So what I tell people to do, and most people don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, I struggle with it, is I really struggle to live at 80% of every dollar I bring in. So 10% we tithe, give away, and 10% I put towards the future. And then I kind of live off the 80%. And that took a lot of heartache for a long time, and it's still hard. But if you do that, and if you can teach your children or people that you get a chance to mentor or talk to that they need to live off of 80% of every dollar, 80 cents of every dollar, then the earlier they start, the better life is.
In a practical sense, living off that 80%, how does that impact you on a daily basis? in terms of what you had to cut out? Or
Well, the things that you have to start with is kind of like Michelle did with that lady she was meeting with, her client. You have to kind of list everything and be accountable for everything, so you can really see where you can start trimming off things. And the things that you can trim off so you can get toward that 80%, you may have to go without cake. You may have to go without Starbucks. You may have to do whatever you can to get yourself, when you start living off that 80%, you get used to it, then it becomes so easy after a while. It's still hard, but it comes easier. But the great thing is, once you have that emergency, when I realized that I was sitting there scratching my head like, man, I got to come up with $700. I haven't had a gig in a month. I was like, man, I got this gig next month. I don't want to waste that money on. Oh, I have money in my emergency fund. I even forget that I have it because I've been doing it for so long. Once you get yourself to that point, things will become a lot easier. But you have to itemize and be accountable. Figure out exactly what you have coming in and going out. Get out of debt and remain out of debt and be a blessing. The interesting thing about the story of the Good Samaritan is he had money to put that cat up in a hotel. If he didn't have the money to put that cat up in a hotel, how good would he have been? He would have been like everybody else. I can just pray for you. You hear us? We kind of cop out with stuff like that. All right.
So excited to be joined by financial expert Dave Ramsey.
That's right. We're going to spend the next several minutes asking Dave your questions. But first, Dave, explain to us how you got to where you are today.
Well, we started off like a lot of people, doing pretty well, and then we started doing even better and better and better. And gosh, by the time I was 26, I was a millionaire. I had over $1 million net worth. I was making a couple of $100,000 a year, but I had done stupid. I had borrowed too much money, and we spent the next 2.5 years of our life losing everything we owned. We were sued and foreclosed on, and so there I sat with a brand new baby, a toddler, and a wife who was ready to kill me. And we were broke and bankrupt and had to start completely over, starting at 28 years old. And at the bottom of that mess, I decided I was going to learn how money really works, not what someone's theory is, not what your broke brother-in-law thinks, but what really does work. And so I started talking to old rich people and people that had money and kept it. I had been young and rich. I didn't want his opinion. And so I found common sense. And when I started applying that to my life, dad blame if it didn't work.
Yeah, so you actually know that this plan works that we're going to tell people about today.
Well, absolutely. Not only have we personally worked it, my wife Sharon and I, over the last 15 or 20 years and proven that it works, but we've worked with literally millions of families around America, walking them out of debt. And one of the things we discovered was that the money piece is so overwhelming. You don't know where to start. Do we start with retirement? Do we start with college? Do we start getting out of debt? What about that emergency fund? And when you get too many things going at one time, have you ever noticed that nothing happens? And so we broke it down into one little step at a time to where, gosh, that way I can chew it. I have to have it in smaller bites.
Yeah, it seems so overwhelming when you take it all on at once. And so you're right, taking these baby steps, and that's part of your plan. You call it the baby steps, right?
Exactly. We came up with 7 steps, and over the years of 20 years of financial counseling, thousands and thousands of families, we found that that if they'll follow these steps, and we've adjusted them and polished them, and about 10 years ago, we really settled in on this and have just driven it home with so many folks. The first step is quickly get $1,000 in the bank, a little starter beginner emergency fund. It's just kind of Murphy repellent. It just keeps all the bad stuff away because there's a little money to keep him away. And then we're going to work on our debts, everything but the house. Baby step 2 is list your debts, smallest to largest, pay minimum payments on everything but the little one, and attack that little one with a vengeance. And work your way right down through that. Because when you pay off that little one, you get this little attaboy or attagirl. Yes, I'm winning.
Right, yeah.
And then you knock the next one off, and then the next one off, and then the next one off. And by the time you get towards the bottom of this and you're paying on your big car debt or your student loan, man, you're fired up because you're winning for the first time in your life with money. And so a lot of this is behavior modification as much as it is mathematics. So once we're debt-free, and most people can't even imagine doing that,
right,
debt-free but the house, then we move on to baby step 3. And we go back to our little $1,000 account and we raise it up to a fully funded emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses.
That really seems overwhelming, 3 to 6 months. When you really put pen to paper and you think, gosh, I've got to save that much money.
Now, when you start talking about $10,000 or $15,000 I'm going to have in savings just for emergencies, oh my gosh! But think about how you would feel like this last economic problem we've gone through. If you had no payments and $10,000 or $15,000 sitting in the bank.
Yes.
Wow, that's peace. That's financial peace. Two words that don't go together, like airline service. So it's worth the trouble. And you know what? You can save that much if you don't have a car payment. If you don't have a student loan that's been around so long you think it's a pet. If you got rid of MasterCard and discovered bondage and American Distress and all these people, right? So suddenly you got money because you're not giving it all to the bank, and it really happens in about 6 months from the time people are debt-free, and it takes them about 2 years to become debt-free usually, that they can build up that emergency fund. Then that brings us to baby steps 4, 5, and 6, which we do at the same time. Baby step 4 is putting 15% of our income into retirement, which we can do because we don't have any payments but a house.
Right.
Baby step 5 is now we're going to save for the kids' college, which we can do now that we don't have any payments but a house. And baby step 6 is all the extra money we get thrown at us from bonuses or inheritance or anything that happens, we throw it at the house. And people are paying off their homes using this plan in an average of about 7 years from the time we start this.
Which is awesome. That saves you so much in interest. Okay, I have a question, though, about baby steps 4 and 5. You say, and I've actually heard you speak before, but invest in your retirement before you invest in your kids' college plan. Kind of explain that.
Well, I got to tell you, most of the time when I say that to moms, they go, I kill you. You're telling me do not put my children before me? That's not very noble. I mean, these are women who will wear the drapes so their kids can have $200 sneakers, And so, but it is noble because here's what's going to happen. 100% of the time you are going to retire if you don't die. Not 100% of the people go to college. Mm-hmm. And only 56% of people that do go to college graduate.
All right, so that's Dave Ramsey, and he has this course called Financial Peace University. It's $100. They have it at churches everywhere in Hampton Roads, and it's $100 for the kit. Once you have the kit, you can go back through the course multiple times. My wife and I have gone 2.5 times. We're working on 3.5 coming up soon. Because sometimes you just need to have refreshers. Right, but it's one of the best $100 I ever spent. It was truly an investment. And, we fluctuate on the baby steps. Sometimes we're at 3, sometimes we go back to 2. Yes.
Let's talk about that dog cosign for a second.
Oh, okay. Let me jump forward. All right, so we can all accept that God is the source, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Giving is essential. I'm just going to jump right to it. Okay. I didn't say not to co-sign. I think you're foolish too. But I didn't say that. I didn't say that. So believe what you will. Real life, one of my relatives co-signed for her son. And when his vehicle was repossessed, her ability to refinance their home ended. And she said, well, she was going to pay. I know she was going to pay, but she ran into some bad luck. Well, now you're sharing. And the unfortunate thing about co-signing is you actually take on the debt for the person. And one thing I've kind of realized is banks are pretty smart. Financially. They're pretty smart. I hate some of the stuff they do. But they are smart financially. And if they're going to say, I'm not going to loan you any money, it's probably for a good reason. It's probably for a darn good reason. So yeah, we should co-sign. So, my son's 11th grader. I am not doing a Parent Plus loan. My parents did one for me. They forced me to pay it off. I paid off their loan. Their Parent Plus loan they took out for my education. But my kids already know his pops is not doing that. He's not letting mom do it either. And one of the things that I found is when people say, no, I'm not going to co-sign, people's behavior changes. And so I had a client that was about to co-sign. This is when I was doing financial services about 3 years ago. And She said, well, Varner, I know you told me not to co-sign, but I want her to have a safe car. And I said to her, if she can't afford that car payment, she can't afford the car. Say no and let her afford a car that she can afford. And that was one of the hardest things that father had to do. He got a whole bunch of flack. You know, you're not a good father. You never in her life half the time anyway, da-da-da-da-da. And he went through some hard moments. He cussed me out a couple of times. But his daughter ended up making a different decision, bought a car she can afford, and then he started sharing some of the stuff that I've been sharing with him. And his daughter graduated debt-free and said, Dad, if I would have taken that loan out, I would have taken out more loans. So now he's the best dad in the world. He takes me out for lunch. If he would have given in, he would have a totally different situation. When you say no to something that's wrong, you change somebody's behavior. At least they got to get it for somebody else. So, that's why the book says. I'm just repeating what the book says. And I've seen family members who are still struggling because they didn't follow. And they were the ones calling me everything but Christian. But they didn't follow that plan. And they're struggling for it. All right, so giving is essential. And it's kind of funny, even though, the Bible talks about how, this good measure, pressed down, shaken together. And I've also found the law of karma is kind of interesting too. If you do something, and I found this in a lot of different cultures and belief systems, if you do something good, it gets repaid 3 times. And when I started following that when I was in college, I noticed that 3, sometimes even more, but at least 3 good things will happen. And so, so good measure, that's 1. Pressed down, that's 2. Shaken together, that's 3. So the Bible talks about 4, but at least 3. So giving is essential, which is one of the reasons that we tithe. But it also forces us to be accountable, which I think is kind of interesting. Saving is essential. Proverbs 22:3, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. If you don't save, you're going to be punished. That's deep. That's deep. All right. Debt is a disease. I've looked at the Torah, I looked at the Bible, I looked at 5 other holy books, and all of them talk about debt being a disease. But we talk to each other about good debt. So debt is now no longer, I can't even, people talk about good debt to me, I'm just like, okay, I can't even hear you. All these books that have guided people into doing better things with their lives for centuries talk about debt being a disease. I was in the financial services system, so one part of the financial services industry deals with lending and borrowing, and they kept using that good debt thing. It was one of the things that was kind of unsettling with me. And contentment. This is one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting. In Hebrews, it talks about not wanting things that other people have. But the other thing that I found later on is it's not saying that you should be content with your station in life. You should always be striving for more. But you should be like, man, I want that G12 car, because my neighbor got it. And I want to do whatever I can. And then I find that a lot of us who got involved with criminal activity when I was growing up did it because they wanted things they saw others having. And how that covetousness kind of led to behaviors. And some of my friends are still like this because they covet. So don't co-sign. Rep. So once again, I was involved with World Financial Group, and I tell people that even though I'm not actively involved with them now, there were some things that I learned from them that I think are very valuable. And I may become back involved with them in the next few years. But those things are creating an emergency fund, asset accumulation. Nobody really talks about asset accumulation. Nobody talked to me about it. And when they started talking to me about making sure you have things that grow in value, you're not spending your money on things that depreciate. You want things that appreciate, like those tennis shoes, depreciate. That car that I want to have that BMW, whatever, 60, but it depreciates. Now, some cars do appreciate, but not the ones you normally buy. So if you put a lot of money and you go into debt for something that depreciates, you're digging two holes. You're digging yourself in a hole quicker. And so nobody really talked about asset accumulation to me. Estate preservation, making sure that things that you work hard for can be passed on to your children's children, like the book says. Proper protection, that's something that is very important. Make sure you have the right type of insurances. Debt management and cash flow. And not that you're doing them in a particular manner, but you're doing these things. Now, Dave Ramsey's course, Financial Peace University, is one of the first places I would recommend anybody go. And it's something that I'm hoping that we can bring to this ministry here. So, but if not, there are classes outside. There's one at Green Run Baptist Church that my wife and I might be attending. And we're taking our kids. We took our kids when we first went. It was really kind of interesting because I mentioned in the lesson I did not too long ago how my son realized that mortgage, age being locked to something, and mort meaning death, meaning you were locked into something for death that was killing you. So having a mortgage is really killing you. Mortgage, yeah. When he's picked up on that, and that's part of Dave Ramsey's course. He asked us a whole lot of questions that we had to struggle to come up with good answers.
Your son.
Pardon?
Your son or Dave Ramsey?
My son.
Yeah, because I teach him sometime in Sunday school. Yes.
Oh, he's a struggle.
He makes the whole class really.
Yeah, but he don't think it's something.
I feel it.
But he takes after somebody.
Right.
So that's the plan, and this is part one.
This is a PowerPoint for us or no? Because I see Pastor taking all these pictures.
Well, it's going on YouTube. Facebook Live, I think.
Oh,
and this is part one. So I think in 2 weeks we have part two. And so this was kind of like the awareness piece. And part two, I'm going to go into a lot of resources so that you can find a resource you're comfortable with. I know that some of us don't like going to other churches. This is our church. I get that. I get why people understand. All right. So there are a lot of resources, and I want to make sure I bring all of those resources that I'm familiar with and I'm comfortable with and I can vet, and make sure that you have those so that we can make some different financial decisions. And then more importantly, we can depart and teach. We can teach other people. Because I would love to see a generation of people who are not locked into bad financial decisions. And speaking of generations of people, I know that it may be on a date that's on a date that the church is doing something. You have something on October 13th, right? Jubilee or something? All right, well, on October 13th, we're screening the movie Generation 1 at the Nero Cinema, and we invite you to come out to that. It's a great film. It's a Thursday night, and this is the Nero Cinema in Norfolk, Virginia. It's a great film. It deals with how we can pass on great financial principles and wealth into the next generation. Before then, we showed a film called Black Friday. And that film, Black Friday, kind of went into how our spending habits benefit everybody but us. And if you get a chance, and if you're not able to come out, you can go to a bookstore and look for Black Friday and buy that, and that's going to wake you up. That's a wake-up call. And Generation 1 is really great. It's even more biblically based than Black Friday. So if you want to work with some people who are really heavy in the ministry, you might want to start with Generation 1. You can buy that in the bookstores too. But Black Friday is the one that I think is the banger. And the great thing is a gentleman who's in both of those movies named Dr. David Anderson, who will be speaking after we screen the movie, and he'll be doing about 45 minutes to an hour of Q&A. And last time, he just blew the house down. Particularly, he was talking to people who own businesses. And, he said some things like, if you're an entrepreneur, the two things you shouldn't have, a house note and a car note. And we look at him like, hold up, those are things you take out loans for. And he showed how you can obtain houses and cars without mortgages and without car notes. And it, blew me away. You can actually Google that on YouTube, and he's at a church, and he's giving a similar presentation. Dr. David Anderson. He has a radio show called Blackonomics, and he owns a radio network called the Empowerment Radio Network. So we'll be doing that. And if there's nothing on the church's calendar, I would really like us to invite the whole church to come out. It would be great. It's some great information, and it's presented in a way that's in a ministry format.
October 13th. There's nothing on the calendar.
Sometime looking Thursday. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, if possible, come on out. It's some great information. You like my daughter's baking? She'll be selling some baked goods there too. Yeah. So we're finished.
Okay.